I spent 7 days learning Marvel Snap's hardest deck, Move Bounce, because I was told it would be a challenge that would take multiple months to learn. However, that was not the case. On just my second day, I had over a 72 win percentage on a 30 game sample size, and on my third day, I had an 80 win percentage over 10 games. This was thanks to the help of a lot of great players in the community giving me advice on how to use the deck properly and a bit of the theory behind the deck. So what I think my conclusion on this deck is that with the right advice you can learn Move Bounce way quicker than months, and it is actually a deck that is incredibly logical on how to play. So here is everything I think you need to know to be good at Move Bounce, so you don't have to take months to learn the deck and you can learn it within weeks. The bread and butter of Move Bounce is optionality. If you want to know how to play Move Bounce, you have to understand why optionality makes this deck strong. What optionality is the fact that you can put your power wherever you want on the last turn and you have the most control over where specifically your power goes. This is strong for Move Bounce because it combines two different concepts that are very heavy on optionality. Move allowing you to play into locations that are otherwise hard to play into, as well as just reorganize your power in general. The other concept it combines is Bounce. Bounce allows you to bring cards back to your hand and then play them where you need to play them on the last turn. This is why Move Bounce is the best deck in terms of optionality in the game, which makes it particularly strong. So let's go over the 4 cards that provide you the most optionality and how I use them. For Madame Web, she is just best in the middle location because with cards moving left and cards moving right, the middle location becomes this move hub that is very strong. She also represents multiple moves, so a lot of the time, you always want to bring your scalers back to your Madame Web lane, with the middle being the strongest, with the left being second best. A lot of time, what I like to do on turn 5 is preload Madame Web with a card, whether that be a dagger or like I'm playing Iron Fist and Toxin brings back my cards, and then I move the Toxin into the Madame Web lane. Why this is strong is because it is not committing your power with either Toxin or that, and Dagger is playing your energy and you get that extra move on the last turn. So why these are strong is because it's not committing your power anywhere specifically, and it's basically using Madame Web to her maximum ability while still having the maximum amount of energy to play the cards in your hand from the bounce. The next card is Doctor Strange. What I like about Doctor Strange is he is very flexible on sequencing. You can basically move any card you want as long as the highest power, no matter what the sequencing of your thing is. A lot of this deck is very heavy on sequencing with you needing to play cards in particular order. Doctor Strange basically erases that all and you can move whatever card you want. This provides a lot more optionality than a lot of the other moved cards. One of the things I particularly enjoy doing with Doctor Strange is moving non-movers. Let's say I have a Toxin in an 8 power lane, my opponent has 25 power in that lane. A lot of the time, I'll move Toxin out of that lane with my Doctor Strange and then get only like 1 move on my torch to win the other lane, and that will just be enough. So I think a lot of the time Doctor Strange is powerful to move non-movers. However, he's also just generally solid as a second move option. He's not as good as like a Rania, Iron Fist, and Ghost Spider, but like as a second move option, he does the job, and even though he's a bit more expensive, he is great in a secondary move role, but he's also great for those non-movers, which I particularly love because it provides even more optionality to this deck. The other 2 cards is Beast and Toxin. Beast is often played on turn 5. For Beast, you want to stack lanes, meaning you want your Iron Fist, your Human Torch, and your Ghost Spider all to end up in one singular lane, so you can bounce all of them at the same time. The same thing for Toxin, you want to stack lanes, and for both Toxin and Beast, you also can use them proactively to dodge tech. Let's say you have priority, you're expecting a Killmonger. It might be right to not play Beast on turn 5, play him on turn 4 to dodge that Killmonger and just win the game because of that. One thing special about Toxin is the fact that he costs 2. A lot of the time, you can play him either on turn 4 with Beast, and basically you get 2 double bounces, which is a very strong play in of itself, because you get to do a lot of your moving and bouncing actions a lot more because you have these 2 bouncers. Another strong thing I enjoy doing when I don't draw Beast is on turn 6, not turn 6, on turn 5, I can figure a big card that I played on turn 4 and started scaling, plus my Toxin. What that does is, let's say it was Human Torch, I bring a Human Torch to my hand, I Toxin up, I bring 2 Human Torches to my hand, and I just have this incredibly strong hand that just most often wins me the game, and it's very hard to interact with because everything is still in my hand and not on board. So like a Killmonger or Shang-Chi, the fact that I have no priority and these cards are just big power in general makes it almost impossible to interact with properly. The next thing you need to know about Move Bounce is that it only really has 4 scalars, so it's very, very important to be familiar with these 4 scalars. So let me go over each of these scalars and give you a bit of priority on when to play them, how they're best used, so you can understand this deck and use it optimally. So the first thing I want to say about Human Torch is it's by far your best scalar. Araña, Iron Fist is a super big torch already. You can figure that Torch will just snowball games sometimes, and he is by far your best scalar. Notably, he is also your most fragile scale, so it's important to protect him versus tech. Killmonger just wipes the floor with him, so a lot of the time you want to be... Shang-Chi can even be used against him, Shadow King can be used against him. A lot of time you're protecting your torch with bounces as early as possible or whenever needed. He is the card you are most likely to want to protect as early as possible. Another thing important about Human Torch is limit the greed. Let's say your opponent has 0 power in a lane, you have 0 power in a lane, you have a 10 power torch in hand, and you're gonna play like a 2 power card there. You don't necessarily have to move your torch. You can just put the 2 power card there plus the 10 power torch. That's 12 power in a lane. It's very hard for your opponent, especially if they only have 6 energy, to add 12 power into a lane while contesting the other 2 lanes. Sometimes being less greedy with torch is the correct thing to do, and just note that, and use your other move resources to move other cards. Often the time, that's right, compared to just having one super big torch. The second thing you need to know about the scalars is Vulture. Vulture, oftentimes you want to preload the moves, which what I mean is often correct if Vulture is the only card in your hand to play Iron Fist on turn 2. So you can move your Vulture on turn 3. To activate your Araña on turn 2. So you can move your Vulture on turn 3. A lot of time you're playing Madame Web into Vulture if you have just that hand and you don't have any of the other good stuff, and then you're moving the Vulture and you can trigger it. That is another solid early play. Vulture I find is really solid in the early play. He's not the best thing you can be doing, but a lot of time you just need to like kind of scratch out that value between turn 2 and turn 3 so that you can get a valuable like trigger play on turn 4 or a valuable beast play on turn 4, something like that, or a toxin play. So you're very much scraping the bottom barrel with Vulture, but he is your second best early scaler often. Another early scaler that is very good on offhands, but also just very good late game is Sage. Sage often is very, very good just played late game, not bouncing at all. But she is a premium trigger target. A lot of time you don't mind just playing Sage onto a lane, getting her to like 6 power, and then frigging it. Now you have another big Sage. That's your turn 3 and turn 4 play. And then maybe you beast it up. You didn't have a lot of movers in hand. Sage made an otherwise unwinnable game slightly winnable just because you got these multiple Sage procs and you're very happy with just having multiple Sage procs. The last card is Dagger. Dagger is by far your worst early game card. Generally, there's not a lot of cards on the board, so she just does not scale very well. However, Dagger is like this bomb on turn 6. She is very solid. A lot of time, instead of moving your torch, it's often correct to move your Dagger twice. Moving your Dagger twice, contest the second lane. Your torch is already pretty huge from the early game. A lot of time, that's correct, and Dagger will be an MVP in that situation. Another thing I particularly enjoy doing with Dagger is having her as this turn 5 preload on Madame Web. And this is how I will play Madame Web, Dagger onto Madame Web and Beast to pick up all my cards. I'll move Dagger once, maybe move her again with my Strange or my Ghost Spider, and that just creates one really big Dagger, and I still have all the cards to play on my thing, on my last turn that I beasted up, without committing too much to the Dagger other than that little bit of energy I had extra on turn 5. So Dagger is very good in the late game. Now that we've covered all the optionality and scalar cards, we'll talk about the lesser talked about cards, but the cards that make this deck work and that are fundamentally important to this deck. The cards that actually scale up these big scalars, the execution cards or the activators. The first of these cards is Araña. Araña is best used early. She's a really strong early play. She's not that bad playing turn 5 to get one extra move. What I will say about Araña is most often you want to be using her ability early, because especially if you have a Frigga in hand, you just want to get as many moves as possible. So when you actually do copy that up, you had an extra move because of Araña. Notably, Araña, unlike the other move cards, does not want to stack, because beasting up or toxining up on Araña does not matter, and it just clogs up your hand if anything, because Araña can only be activated once. Notably, there is two very particular things you want to know about Aranya is you only activate Aranya on turn 2 if you have no Iron Fist. And why this is strong to activate it on turn 2 is because if they try to Red Guardian your Aranya, it's already activated. It does not matter and you still get that extra move. However, if you have Iron Fist, the combination between Iron Fist, then activate Aranya, and then move a Human Torch, it's just so much power that often you'll take that little bit of risk with the Red Guardian or whatever to not activate your Aranya that one turn. But if you have no Iron Fist and you're planning on moving a Vulture, often it's correct to move it on turn 2. With Iron Fist, notably, there is a few interesting interactions with Iron Fist that you should know about and that make him particularly strong. First of all, he's a Frigga enabler. A lot of the time with Iron Fist, when you want to Frigga a card, Iron Fist will be your main proc. Iron Fist, Aranya, and Madame Web are played before the card, which allow you to Frigga up the card. So these are your 3 main enablers for Frigga, especially if you want to copy a Vulture or a Human Torch or whatever. There's that key combination with Aranya plus Fist where there's just so much power with a double move, especially with Human Torch. That is a notable node interaction you gotta be thinking about. Notably, he moves left, so the same situation with Madame Web where you want your movers to go from right to the middle. You shouldn't be noting that as well. And one last thing to note is often you prefer to have your bounces towards the right side, because what you can do is you can preload your web with that bouncer. So if you stack on the right side and your Madame Web is in the middle, with Iron Fist, what you can basically do if you draw him late is, let's say I already had a Ghost Spider and I'm there move my Human Torch to the right side, I can play Iron Fist as my 3rd card and then play Toxin or Beast as my 4th card. That'll move it into the Madame Web lane and give me some extra optionality. So those are interesting things you can do with this Iron Fist. For Frigga, there's not much to talk about, but basically her use cases are when you want to use her is when there's big scalers on board. So if you're stacking your Human Torch and he's to be the biggest Human Torch you've ever seen, Frigga is probably a good idea to play her then. Another important thing is when Frigga is also good when you just have a low volume of scalers in hand. Let's say Human Torch was your only scaler you drew and you drew all the movers. You just want to move Human Torch a few times with the cards not named Ghost Spider or Doctor Strange, and then figure it up, and now you have 2 good scalers in hand. You can beast it up, and then you have 2 good scalers, and that's all this deck needs to win. Sometimes offhand you might just have Sage. Frigga will help with that low volume of scalers because you'll get you a 2nd scaler in hand. Notably with the cards that you Frigga, oftentimes it's correct to hold them just because it gives you that more optionality and it plays around a bit more tech. It's not always correct. You gotta consider energy, but oftentimes it's correct to hold that 2nd scaler in hand, even if the 1st scaler is still on board. And then the last part about this enablers that you need to take note of is Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider is good like Doctor Strange just as a 2nd move. She's not the greatest as your 2nd move. You might prefer like an Aranya Madame Web because of Frigga, or an Iron Fist Madame Web, or an Iron Fist Aranya. But she does play that role of a 2nd move. She's notably bad with Frigga. She's not my favorite card. I think she might be the worst of the cards that move. However, I still think it's good to have her because she represents that extra movement. And I think, notably, the one strong interaction that Ghost Spider has is the preloading effect, where when I told you about preloading that dagger on turn 5, moving it and moving it back, I think Ghost Spider plays an excellent role in that. Or let's say I preloaded the Madame Web, so I played Madame Web Vulture as my turn 2 and turn 3, and then I moved the Vulture on turn 3. I can bring it back with Ghost Spider on that same turn. I think that's a very strong play to do, and a very interesting play to do. And I think Ghost Spider is strong in these preload situations, although they're not too common. And with that, the video is over. That's everything I learned this week playing Move Bounce, and I quite enjoyed my experience. If you want to watch me play Move Bounce or play other decks, check out my Twitch at twitch.tv Heart of the Card Snap, where I'll be playing the decks I'm talking about here oftentimes, or I'll be applying concepts that I'm talking about here oftentimes on Twitch. So go ahead and follow that if you want to see my gameplay in super high infinite, like top 50 high infinite. Otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.